I'm Ramsis.
And I'm the Vesper.
And we just returned from Huntington Comic and Toy Convention 2022. Before we begin, though, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and
ring that bell.
That's right. We're here to bring you another edition of Vesper's Convention Reviews. We had so much fun at our Lexington convention. We decided, here we go again. We now just returned for the Huntington Comic and Toy Convention. It took place from June 4th to June 5th, the weekend in Huntington, West Virginia, and boy, did we have a blast. So this is going to be a full review of our 2-day attendance at this convention in Huntington, West Virginia.
Why do we go to the Huntington Comic and Toy Convention and the Lexington Comic and Toy Convention? Well, it's because we live relatively close to both these, so it's not a hardship to attend these.
Yep, exactly. They're close by, so why not? That's the best answer I can give you. But we do plan on going to a third one this year. Stay tuned for that. We're not going to give any details away on that one. Stay tuned for that.
Except it's in Ohio.
So let's get it going, and we'll give you a little history here. So this is not the first time we went to the Huntington Comic and Toy Convention.
That's right. We attended last year. And the reason we attended last year was because we got free tickets, because we purchased tickets to the Lexington Comic and Toy Convention before the pandemic hit, and it was canceled. So they extended the tickets.
So for 2021, they had a huge turnout. COVID was, the numbers were getting better around this time in the summer of last year. They wanted to do a test. Let's see how many people are going to come. So anyone that had a Lexington ticket from the past 2 years, including 2021, they were going to give you free admission. So yeah, it was packed. Everyone was using these free tickets. A lot of good guests. It was a lot of fun. I wish we reviewed that, but from now on, we will review any convention we actually go to. This year, the guests weren't as memorable or as big, but that doesn't mean it was bad. The 2 days we attended here, this was a lot of fun.
You know, we like going to panels. And you know what? We went to a total of 7 panels.
So that's our little background that we were at this before. So now let's go into our first day here. So here we are, June 4th, 2022.
We pull into Huntington, West Virginia, and the first thing you have to do at a convention is find parking. Now here is where the big difference is between last year and this year. Event parking is usually astronomical. You have to pay for the full time limit in like the parking garages. You don't want to pay $10 to stay there for 4 or 5 hours.
No, definitely not.
So you find parking elsewhere, and we found meter parking, but you know what? It says this right here. Free on Saturday and Sunday. Hallelujah, praise the Lord, save $10.
Great, that takes care of that. We don't have to worry about parking. But we did walk by the garage and we noticed that they actually changed the prices. So it wasn't really that big a deal. Yes, we saved money, but it's not even that much money that we saved. As you can see from the sign here, $3. All right, that's reasonable. If you want to be very close to the arena, $3 is not a bad deal for all-day parking.
After parking, we had to walk through Pullman Square here, as you can see. And because the convention center is so small, they put vendors out here. Now, seeing as how hot it was, I wouldn't want to have been a vendor that got stuck on the outside, but they're still here. I mean, it goes all around here. And the people that also sponsor this also own the Inner Geek. They have their little store there and some other things going on there as well.
I think it was around 88, something like that, but it was in the high 80s, low 90s, and it definitely felt it. It was that hot, disgusting heat. You don't want to be out there type of heat. I felt bad for these vendors, but I'm sure they're going to do very well, so good for them. I don't feel that bad. They're going to make a lot of money.
The Huntington Comic and Toy Convention is at the Mountain Health Arena, which used to be Big Sandy Superstore Arena, which used to be the Huntington Civic Center.
And it's a small arena. This is not Madison Square Garden. It's not even the Rupp Arena. It's a very small rinky-dink, but it's big enough to do what it has to do, which is hold events, wrestling, or, you know, concerts or whatever. It's big enough to do what you need. And yeah, the first thing that happened was after we got through Pullman Square is there's a long line. But we expected that. Last year, there was a line. This year was a line.
But last year's line was infinitely longer to get through because everybody's worried about COVID. You gotta wear a mask. You gotta do this. But this year was actually nice. We were actually going to get in this long line here, as you can see, when a helper actually told us, hey guys, you have advanced tickets. Please go up here, get your badge, then get in this line.
So we did. There was a black tent near the entrance to the Mountain Health Arena.
And it's behind the Jurassic Park Jeep, as you can see.
Yep, which is very cool. Got a nice picture of that for you guys to see. And very simple. Here's a ticket, beep, they scanned it, here's your tag. Now go back, wait in that super long line, which was fine. They were 2-day bedded. It was similar to Lexington, except they went back to the VIP name because this is only a 2-day event. They're actually using the word VIP. And again, all VIP gets you get a t-shirt, and we've already gotten plenty of t-shirts for them. We don't need another one. And you get front row seating for these panels. And again, we don't need that either. we like sitting a little back so you can see everything from a nice distance.
And, I mean, they had the usual security check-in, metal detectors, take everything out of your pockets. They also had the usual prop check-in and stuff, but since we didn't dress up, we just wanted to go to enjoy ourselves.
Here you go, and he looked at us, nodded, and we went right to it. So very simple. And like I said, you can see here, it's a very small operation. They had like a little concession stand when you walk in, not a big deal. Prices were reasonable, not good, but reasonable. You know, some of these places can be out of control. This was actually a little reasonable.
So this brings us to the convention floor.
Yeah, so right when you walk in, it was so simple. You walk right past this concession stand, you walk into the main arena itself, and there you go. You have all the vendors laid out in very nice rows. There was about 4 rows of vendors, I'll say. And then on the outskirts, they had all the celebrity guests where you can get their autographs. So it was all in one nice room. And I could tell they definitely would have liked to have more, but that was all they used. They used every spot they had for all the... That was it. So it was limited space, but they used it to its fullest.
I agree. And the best part was, you could literally do the wingspan test. What's that, you ask? Well, stand in the middle of the aisle, stretch your arms out as wide as you can like you're a bird. Your arms couldn't reach the vendors on the other side of you. It means that you had room to move, which was not true at Lexicon.
We didn't bump into anybody on either of the days. It was very nice. We didn't see as much to buy because of the limited space, so that was a little different. In Lexington, there was a lot more options because you had more vendors. This one, there were some fun vendors, but just not as many options due to the limited vendors, so that was the downside of that. And I like that the celebrities were actually there. I mean, I like where it's all in one space. You don't have to walk into this room to go there. You don't have to walk in this room. If you want an autograph, just go to the other side of the room, and there they are. They're all sitting right there.
And they weren't nearly as anal retentive about taking pictures of the area in which the celebrities were sitting.
Yeah, so we did a quick walk around within the 10 o'clock hour that we showed up. Our first Q&A was at 11, so they gave us about a half hour to look around. We did a lay of the land. That's the first thing we do. And we were impressed. It was fun. It was nice. We got to meet all the vendors. We got to see everything there. And then we headed right out the side here. You see, you go through the side passage here. There's no floors in here. It's all one floor. That's another difference with this convention. And there's a hallway that leads to the grand ballroom where all the Q&A sessions will take place. And let Vespor tell you about the grand ballroom because he was having some problems in there. It's a very gigantic room, as you can see here. Look at this.
Yep, this room was huge. It was fully half the size of the actual vendor area, which is a good thing. Bad thing is, there wasn't enough people there to fill it up all the way. I will fully admit that I'm kind of photosensitive, and the lights in there were messing hardcore with my eyes, so I hope that if anybody watches this from the convention, don't hate me, panelists, if I was holding my hands over my eyes and looking away from you, because I was seeing dots because of all the lights.
Yeah, it was very weird lighting. It was such a gigantic room, and the lights are just like sort of shining down, and you're all staring straight ahead, and you have like hundreds of seats all over the place. It was a very weird room. So we actually learned who the commentator's name is. You've seen this guy for many years when the conventions, and he's like, "Hey everybody, I'm Joe." I'm like, "Joe, that's the guy's name." You'll see in our pictures that we have a commentator sitting next to these celebrities. His name is Joe. We finally learned.
We walk in there about 10 minutes until the first panel starts, which is for Nakia Burris and Catherine Sunderland, the Yellow and Pink Rangers.
Later, Power Rangers from the first iteration of Mighty Morphin, and then they went into Zeo, and then they went into Turbo before they both were in out. So yeah, they had a long run, and wow, were they interesting. I didn't expect what we got from this one.
And there was plenty of jokes to abound. This was the first panel, definitely one of the most fun of the first day.
There's a reason why this is probably the least attended. Do you know who was holding a photo op session at this exact time while this was going on? Do you, Vespor?
Oh yeah, well, it happened to be Walker, Texas Ranger, Chuck Norris himself.
That's correct. Yeah, so Chuck Norris was there, and sadly, very sadly, he wasn't doing a Q&A, and I was very disappointed with that. I wanted to hear him do a Q&A so bad. But he was doing photo ops at this exact time that the former Power Rangers are doing their panel. So our room was a little empty. I'll say we had about 30 people, and that's being generous. It might have even been like 25. It wasn't full at all. But it was because the line for Chuck Norris's photo was around the corner. So rightfully so, everyone wanted to pick with Chuck Norris. And they were making that joke too. Boy, we shouldn't have planned Chuck Norris as the first thing of the day, but they did. So unfortunately, turnout wasn't great. But that's okay. Unfortunately, they had a slow start. Joe was trying to get the crowd warmed up, and we were all into it. Everybody was into it. Nobody was like, "Oh, this is terrible." It's hard to start things off. So Joe asked an initial question, got things going. The girls loved it. They talked about what they've been doing and their history, and they talked about that they have a podcast they do together on YouTube. But it was a great starter, because once that happened, then the questions started appearing all over the place.
The best part was, even though there wasn't that many people in there, they didn't look depressed. They were absolutely happy to be here, and they talked a lot about everything surrounding Power Rangers, which was really fun. And the whole star of this, who just stole the entire panel, was Nakia. Holy cow, she was awesome.
Oh yeah, she was so bubbly, energetic, talented, everything. She was witty, she was funny, she was informative. I mean, she was great. I've seen Catherine before, but this is the first time I saw Nakia, and I was impressed. Like, wow, the third Yellow Ranger is just as good as everyone else. It was just much fun. I don't know what to expect from these actors and actresses when you see them.
And the best part about all this was, me and Ramses always wondered, she's supposed to be from Africa, but she doesn't act anything like from Africa, and she actually addressed this without us having to ask it.
For you guys listening to us now, if you're not familiar, in the third season of Power Rangers, they go to Africa because it's like they had to go all over the world to get crystals or something. I forgot the exact story, but they had to travel to each continent to get something. Aisha is in Africa, but she wants to stay there, and it's a ridiculous story. She wants to stay there to help the Africans, because she feels bad for them or whatever. She was leaving the show, the actress, so this is what they came up with. And she gives Nakia's character the power and says, you go now, and suddenly she's with the team. And this is in Africa, by the way. I don't remember where in Africa. It might have been South Africa or Kenya. I forgot where it was exactly. And that's it. And everyone in the world's wondering, gee, she just left her family with Africa. Does it make sense to anybody else? And she explained it. Yeah, they didn't care. They being the producers.
Do you want me to talk with an African accent? No. Should I wear clothes like I'm from Africa? No. Should I wear earrings? No. As a matter of fact, don't even reference Africa again, she said, until they save her parents like 75 episodes after she was in it.
Right, in Power Rangers Turbo, I think they bring her parents back. So, yeah, it's so ridiculous.
And then they regaled us with some of the things they had to go through in the movies, on the sets. But the funnest part about them all is both of them are mothers, and they both talked about how their children used their stardom as Power Rangers to help them fit in. It was great. You can ask them about it whenever you see it. They'll love to tell you the story.
They were great. It was a lot of fun, and it turned out very well.
Now, at 12, the next panel began, which was Wynonna Earp's creator, Bo Smith. But we didn't go to this, namely because we weren't interested in Wynonna Earp. Hate us, love us.
The truth is the truth. We're not fans, and hey, why sit there lunchtime? Let's go get something to eat. Huntington has a lot of good food options, so that's what we did. We walked out the doors, and we went to a food place. And where did we go?
Right there.
Oh, yeah, Rapid Fire. There's the sign. And I'm sure you guys have this in your towns now. You walk into a place, and you say, I want a pizza with this, and I want a pizza with that. That's what Rapid Fire is. It's one of those quick-make pizza places. You can get different dough sizes, all the toppings you want. Nice full price drink. It was great. A lot of fun. So we came back just in time for the 1 o'clock panel. And this is probably the biggest star they had for the 2 days we were there. This really is a big name. It might not seem like a big name. You hear Kevin Conroy, and you're like, Kevin Conroy, who's that? He's only the most iconic Batman voice ever. He was the voice in the animated series, the original Batman, the animated series, and then all the series that followed, and video games. So he is the voice of Batman.
And he was absolutely amazing. He knew how to play to a crowd. When we were originally walking around and getting the lay of the land in the vendor area, he stood up on top of the table out there and was like, gave this Batman spiel, and the entire arena erupted. And then you know what he did? In the panel, he did the same thing, and everybody stood up in this room, which was halfway filled. It was amazing. He knew how to play to a crowd. I was like, man, for a voice actor, how does he know to play to a crowd? Well, Ramses, did you know that he went to Juilliard?
Yes, I actually did. He only mentioned it 20 or so times. Yes, but he was one of the original groups to go to the Juilliard theater group there, and he learned acting from one of the best, and he had a great group. He even knew Christopher Reeve there, he was mentioning, which was cool. He was not shy about telling us that he went to Juilliard. He went to Juilliard. He went to Juilliard.
And he wasn't shy about saying that he was a Broadway stage actor before he got into voice acting. It was really good and sincere.
Yeah, and I think he was proud of it, but not in a bragging way. He was proud of it that it really did help him. Because he mentions that he had failures in life. You know, not every celebrity is instant success. And most celebrities are not instant success. You got to work your way in, just like anyone else in the world. And he was proud that, no, it didn't help him to become like a big movie star, but it helped him with this role. You know, who knew that this role was going to be what he'd become iconic for? He went into full detail of how his Juilliard training really helped him. He got his head into the idea of what's this character about? Think darker, think comic book, think original origins, family dying. He has to stop all the badness in Gotham City. And when they heard this voice, they're like, that's it. That's the Batman we're looking for.
And he also talked about some of the other things he did. For example, he was in one of my favorite Vietnam serial series of the 1980s. And no, it wasn't China Beach, it was Tour of Duty. And I did not realize Kevin Conroy was in one of my favorite shows from the 80s.
Yeah, he was in other things besides Batman, and I think he enjoyed that he was able to tell us all about, look, I did this, and I'm not just Batman, but he still loved being Batman. He was very proud that I'm the voice. You can imitate me, I'm the one that came up with this. I'm the original, no one better. They also made a fun point that he had a different Bruce Wayne and a different Batman personality, and I like that, because I didn't really realize that, but it's true. You have to act differently when you're Bruce Wayne versus Batman, and I think Kevin Conroy also captured that very well, as he explained.
And because of all of his years at Juilliard and being a stage actor, he did command the room. Everybody was looking at him. This guy had a presence, and you're thinking, wow, he's a voice actor?
Yeah, he just suddenly stood up, and he didn't sit down again. This was happening like 15 minutes into it. He decided, I'm standing up. And he put the microphone down, by the way, and he said, this is how you talk. So he just started talking regularly. He wasn't yelling, by the way. You talk from the diaphragm. Everyone can hear you. You have to act like you're on the stage. We heard him perfectly. He didn't pick up the microphone again for the rest of the session. He definitely had the biggest crowd of both days. Very impressive. He deserved it.
Well, our next panelist at 2 o'clock was Marty Grabstein, and he was the voice of Courage the Cowardly Dog and many others. He was actually really awesome. But whereas Kevin Conroy stood up as the stoic Batman, Marty came off as a goofball.
A lot of the same people stayed, but I'll be very honest, 2/3 of the crowd all dispersed. We had like 1/3 of the crowd. So yes, everyone was there for Kevin Conroy. And then Marty comes in, and he's looking at the now empty room. There's about 35 people, I want to say, left, maybe 40 if I'm being generous. So there's about 40 people, and there was 100 people before, maybe probably 150 before. And now it's like, oh, where did everybody go? And Marty's all upset. And he said, all right, that's it. I'm leaving. So then he said, I'm going to do this all over again. He comes in all like, that welcome was terrible. You guys stink. And he left. And then he comes right back in, and the whole crowd starts going, giving a standing ovation. He's like, that's better. You guys. So yeah, he was all goofy. He was all over the place. He was all wacky. And we were laughing. It's funny. Yeah, he was acting silly and funny. It was cute.
And the reason he was so personable is because he apparently did a lot of stand-up skits and was an actual stand-up comedian at one point in his life. And man, he was just like playing this up like he was in a show. He was getting them to bring out the camera to videotape him. He was having a blast. And here's the thing that stuck out in my mind. He sounds like he's from New York, like Ramses is.
Yeah, Vespor made that connection very quickly. And I said, yeah, he does sound like a New Yorker. And then eventually in the panel, he did mention originally from New York. Yeah, he mentions New York. So we put the connection. There he is, a New Yorker, fellow New Yorker. And the best part was he was not letting Joe get away with anything. So he had all the notes of things he wants to go over with Marty in case the crowd doesn't ask a lot of questions. Marty's just having a lot of fun. He's like, oh, you have notes here. Yeah, oh, these questions are so great. Joe's making a comment about, oh, we just had Kevin Conroy. Oh, so Kevin had the huge crowd and I get nobody. Yeah, thanks for pointing it out. So yeah, Marty was just having fun, poking at his own silliness.
Marty felt like he was out in the crowd heckling himself. I mean, this person was fun to be around. I enjoyed him. And you know what? He loved the questions in the group.
Of course, Vespor asked his favorite question, what's your favorite episode? And Marty's like, I got 4, and he named the 4 type episodes. And he said the 3 episodes are my true favorites, and then the 4th is the first episode. And he said it has to be my favorite because there'd be no show without the first. So that was a very logical answer. So the one question that no one ever asked, because all the other questions people have asked him a billion times. He says, what do you think about the music? And Marty was like, oh my God, you finally asked a question that nobody has ever asked you before. And Marty had a very interesting question. He said, the music is like another character. He said because, the music set it up, and they had different music for different situations. You had the horror, you had the running, you had the scary, you had the build-up. So he said the music was so great on this show, and he's right. Courage the Cowardly Dog had very unique music. I do remember this. And he loved the question. It was like, finally, someone asked me about the music, because I love the music of the show. And then, of course, they asked him, what's his favorite character? Muriel! And he did it in that Courage voice, where that's like...
Muriel!
The only voice, the only word that Courage says in every episode. Muriel! Yeah, he did it in that voice, which was hilarious. And then, what's your favorite this, and what's your favorite that? So yeah, he loved it. And he was having so much fun. But of course, it was all Courage questions. That's what everyone knows Marty for.
He was so good at getting into the questions that you forgot that he was about 5 minutes late now. Me and Ramses don't like it when panelists show up late, even if they are staying there for their fans. And he was staying there for the fans. But you know what? He was only 5 minutes late.
And we love Marty. I'm not saying anything bad. I really do. I think Marty's a brilliant, great voice talent. but he doesn't have a line out the door like Kevin Conroy does. Kevin Conroy's the big deal at this event. Marty's not. Marty's still great, but he's giving time to the fans that really want to see him. So I thought that was great. I had no problem with that. It was 5 minutes, and the best is they gave an extra 5 minutes, so we really didn't miss anything because he did actually stay till 2:50 instead of the 2:45 that usually would end.
And he was humble about it too.
And the last question was a fun one. The longest scream found in episode someone mentioned was 23 seconds. And Marty's like, I'm going to do the longest mumbling sounds of courage. So someone timed me. And this is a great skit he did. So he had someone in the audience, all right, go. And then he's doing the courage mumbling. Blah, 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 blah. And so he says, all right, what's the time? And they say 20 seconds. He said, there you go. I just beat my mumbling record. I'll see you all later. And that was it. It was a lot of fun, actually.
So yeah, definitely Marty was a great one. But we had one more to do for the day. So at 3 o'clock, we got to go see Jim Shooter. Now, this panel was supposed to be specifically writing for Marvel Comics. So he had 2 panels, and one of them was on Saturday, the other is on Sunday. Now, we did not go to the one on Sunday because of how the panel on Saturday happened. And Ramses, would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, so it's called Writing for Marvel Comics. Look what it says. It says, Writing for Marvel Comics with Jim Shooter. So that's not a Q&A. They very clearly list when it's a Q&A. Good, so this is going to be Jim Shooter teaching us about what it was like to write for Marvel. Oh, that's been a lot of fun. So then I see Joe shows up again, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. For a writing panel, Joe is here? Why? We don't need him here.
And another warning sign was, we've been to many of these cons we mentioned before, and when there's supposed to be like a panel that's supposed to be like a history or informational, there's always a film screen or something of the likes. There was none here, or put up.
Everyone sits down. He had a reasonable crowd. It was definitely not the largest, but it was a nice reasonable crowd. There was definitely a good turnout here. A lot of people very interested. So, all right. So it's a little weird. Maybe Joe's just going to start things off, and then Jim's just going to start talking. Nope. It turned into a regular Q&A, which was disappointing only in that that's what we did in Lexington. So if you watch our Lexington, you'll see we already did a Q&A with Jim Shooter.
And the thing was, even Jim Shooter pointed out when people started asking questions, I thought it was supposed to be about writing for Marvel Comics, where it was
and Joe's like, I don't know. This was probably one of the biggest mistakes. And again, not bad. We're going to explain how it went, but very disappointing. We really thought this was going to be learning about how it was writing for Marvel Comics. We didn't know this was just going to be a regular panel. So I think someone dropped the ball here. This was not supposed to be a regular panel. They would have listed this as a regular panel. It was supposed to be a regular panel. This was supposed to be Jim Shooter teaching you what writing for Marvel Comics was about. And he did a little bit of that, and that was his own doing. He wanted to fix it so that it did go that direction. So unfortunately, it wasn't just about writing. It was still very interesting.
And, I mean, he did point out that he had a lot of things to talk about, so come and visit him at his booth. He's going to be there the entire weekend, which he was.
He talked about, the marriage of Peter Parker and Mary Jane, which was a very big deal. That was like his biggest story arc.
And how he thought it was incredibly stupid for modern Marvel to just annul their marriage.
Oh, he hated that. He didn't elaborate on it, and good for him, but he didn't like that at all. He said they ruined one of the best relationships ever in comic book history with just ridiculousness. So he didn't like that. He talked about how long it took to do the stories, but that he kept everyone on schedule. Marvel became known for being on time and making sure to meet schedules and having good stories, so that was Jim Shooter.
He also elaborated a lot more on what he talked about at Lexington, in the fact of what happened at the Marvel buyouts and how he eventually got fired. And there was definitely a lot of regret there. He even mentioned that he regretted a lot of how it happened, and he got fired trying to protect the people there, which is amazing. This is what, employers should be doing. They should be trying to protect their employees. And
and he got fired for doing that because the corporation who now owned it, because it got bought by this company, kept going down the chain until other companies bought him. And this new company was like, Jim, you're not wrong, but we're a corporation and we're not getting rid of all of our executives in one shot, so we're going to start with you and work our way down. And unfortunately, that's how it went. And he left very bitter, but he at least tried. And I give him credit for it. He tried to do the right thing.
And he did tell only really one story that was the same from the Lexington con, but that was because Joe actually asked him the exact same question again.
Yeah, it's like he brought the same notes from last time. Oh, can you tell us about I forgot the guy's name. This wacky guy that you worked there. Yeah, editor there, and it's the same story we told you in Lexington where the guy locks himself in his room, and I'm not going to give away again. That's his story. Find out what the story is. But yeah, it was the same exact story again. Still good, but that's why we skipped on Sunday. We already heard all this. We could see it's not going to be a panel. It's going to be another Q&A session. And the best thing he said is he knows they're going to do the Secret Wars eventually in movie form, and he prays they'll do it right, but he doesn't think they will. That's
and even, I mean, he even said that he doesn't mind it. You have to adapt comic formats to films. You have to change certain things so it flows better. And he doesn't care if they change things. Because, for example, they changed the name of Bruce Banner in one of the adaptations. He said that didn't bother him. That's a minor change. It didn't change the core fundamental aspects of that character. And that's what he's terribly afraid of is going to happen in the Secret Wars. They're going to put these characters out here and totally misrepresent them.
And he mentioned that he loves doing this convention. Now, that's now his new job. He just loves spreading the words of how it used to be and just how much fun it was. And laying that word out there, fun, fun, fun. That's what comic was supposed to be, and he's a very big believer in that. So, yeah, that was it. So he went into that, and unfortunately we didn't do Sunday, so hopefully his Sunday, if you attended his Sunday panel and it was different, let us know. We would love to hear your thoughts on it.
But we also don't want to burn ourselves out on Jim Shooter.
Right, it would be 3 Jim Shooters in 1 year. That's a lot of Jim Shooter, I have to say. So, yeah, that was it. That ended around 3:45. And then we did another final walkthrough in the ballroom area. Vespor bought some stuff for some family members. I looked around to see if there was anything else. I didn't buy much, but it was fun looking at all the stuff there. They had like some cool magnets that were of all different Nintendo characters, which were really cool, done in shaped exactly like the pixel art, very impressive. And they had pictures all over the place, but nothing I needed. I already bought everything I wanted for the past 2 conventions I went to, so that was good. We did that, we left. There were some other events going on at night. Decided not to go to the My Hero Academia panel at 4 p.m., and that had Tia Ballard, Lucy, Christian, Brandon McInnes, and J. Michael Tandem. And I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of My Hero Academia fans out there, fun show, but we had our fill. We were ready to go. That was it.
Yeah, it was a very fun first day, and the last event of the day was at 9:30, and that was the costume contest. And they had some of those earlier in the day, starting at 6. So, I mean, this place was filled with people cosplaying, and all cosplayers love to show off their costumes because they do put a lot of work into them.
Again, if you guys went to the costume party, let us know. I want to hear what costume won. Was it fun? Did we miss out? And that was our experience for Saturday, June 4th at the Huntington Convention.
Sunday, June 5th, day 2 started just like June 4th. We got up early, rushed to Huntington, and found a completely free parking spot to park at. Just like the previous day, all the same vendors were set up, all kinds of activities were going down, and we marched over to wait in line over at the Mountain Health Arena. And just like the previous day, there was a line. But, thank goodness for it being Sunday, that line was much shorter.
Sunday's going to be a much more laid-back, low turnout day, but that's not a bad thing. That's usually how it is. The second day usually isn't as active as the first day. 10 o'clock, doors open. We all got in. Very small crowd. I think more people do show up during the day, but it's never going to reach the same crowd capacity that it was yesterday.
That's right. And so since we decided not to see Jim Shooter later that day, he said, come over to my table and look at all the history. Well, we decided to take him up on it. As you can see here, he had a lot of history. He talked in great detail about each of these personal artifacts, whether it was comic books or letters, but there was a ton of stuff signed by Stan Lee. This man was awesome. He had all these wonderful things praising him. It was beautiful.
We have 4 large scrapbooks, and each of these was divided into where he worked. So the first one was his first stop. Started off at DC, and then he went to Marvel afterwards. Then he did his own comic book company called Valiant. That was the 3rd book. And then he had scrapbook of just some of his classic moments. You know, he did a lot of advertising and he did a lot of newspaper stuff. It was really interesting. So yeah, we started flipping through the books, and he was talking to someone else at the time. The media was interviewing him. It's a good piece. It's Jim Shooter, after all, very famous icon. So they were interviewing him, and Jim was like, yeah, feel free to look through the stuff. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. So we did. Every now and then we flipped through the books, and we did ask some questions as we saw interesting pictures.
Yes. We stopped on this wonderful picture. It looks like they're with somebody from the Catholic Church. Well, lo and behold, he has some artifacts from Francis, Brother of the World, and several other Catholic-related things like Mother Teresa and Pope John Paul II. Now you're wondering, this is Marvel. Why are they making religious books? Well, you know what? They were all for charity, and it was awesome. The stories behind each one of these. And then they came to the biggest fundraising book of all time, apparently, at Marvel, which was involving the X-Men. And it involved different authors taking part in it, and it raised something like over $2 million.
All the money went to charity. It was very important to Marvel that every single penny went, and they verified. It's not one of those fake charities. Every single penny went to this charity.
He was by far the best presenter for today.
It was just wonderful. We must have spent about 25 minutes there before we said thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And then me and the Vespor decided, you know something, that wasn't good enough. We need to really have a memory here of our experiences with Jim Shooter. So we're at a comic convention. Gee, what a place. We got to find a comic book that Jim Shooter was in charge of. And what was his most famous? Well, the Spider-Man wedding. Well, we're not going to find that comic anywhere. But Secret Wars. That's right. He was known as the man behind the Secret Wars and Secret Wars 2. So we went around to the various comic book vendors until we found some that actually had Secret War issues available.
I looked him right in the eye and said, well, after hearing you talk, we decided to come back and get your autograph because, well, you're awesome. He just looked at us and grinned.
Yeah, he signed his name, Shooter, on both of us, put it back in the bag, gave us a grin, and we were on our way. He was glad to do it, and it's something that me and the Vespor will cherish for a very long time. So that made this day worth it, but guess what? We're here for other reasons. It's now 11 o'clock. And it's time for the next panel.
Which was Sam Jones, who was known for being Flash Gordon.
That's right. And we didn't know what to expect. You know, I'm not a big Flash Gordon movie fan, but I like the movie, sure. It had the Queen soundtrack, the Flash Eye, and it's great. Everything going on, explosions, 80 explosion, even though this is late 70s, it really has that 80s feel to it. And yeah, so this is the actor we're going to see. He's in his 70s now, so definitely getting up on years. He's still very fit and prim and all that, and his body at least, but I think his mind's going a little bit, and we'll get to that in a bit here. So yeah, we all sat down. He's actually on time. That's a good thing.
And we find out that Sam Jones is incredibly based. Now, what do I mean by this? Everything that he said sounded like he was giving a lecture to his children. And he was talking about money, how to spend it responsibly. But he also told you, if you're a man, take care of those you need to take care of. And then I go, hey, Mr. Jones, what was your favorite scene in Flash Gordon?
I want you all to understand this. We're here to hear about his experiences in Flash Gordon. He talked about one of the female actresses that he had a lot of fun and he stretched out the scenes and he was very proud of that. That's all he talked about with Flash Gordon up to this point. So when Vespor asked this question, I was like, oh good, finally we're going to hear about Flash Gordon. Vespor answered the question, what was your favorite scene or scenes in the movie? Sam Jones starts with favorite scenes, huh? You know, and then he goes into the whole speech about save your money, guys. You know, you make millions of dollars filming these movies and then the money's all gone. And we're like, wait a minute. So he's talking about what he learned from being an actor. He went through all his money quickly. He'd go through jobs until his wife said, Sam, stop already. Stop spending all the money. And then he learned not to spend money. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Didn't Vespor ask him what his favorite scene in this movie was? And now we're learning about save your money because it goes fast? Did I miss something here, Vespor?
Not really, but I mean, what he did talk about really did touch on home. I mean, he was very sincere. And he was actually very excited to be there. And apparently he likes telling people that start doing these conventions that if you're not here for the fans, well, you can be here for the money and the fans. But if you just...
He brought up money a lot.
Yeah, I know, but he said if you're not going to be here for either of those, then you just need to go home. Wonderful moderator Joe agreed with him on that.
Yes, Joe was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it wasn't a great turnout. There was about, I'll say, 30 people. I think it was 25 to 30. Not a huge turnout. And we were actually excited about it because finally, oh, cool, movie star. Yep, he's going to be so focused on the movie. He's going to be so intense with it. No, not really. He was really just telling personal stories that had nothing at all to do with this movie.
Besides the fact he refused to talk about Flash Gordon, you know, the one movie he's known for, even though he's been in hundreds of shows and TV series, apparently.
He talked more about his experiences in Walker, Texas Ranger. He was in 3 episodes. That he goes on for about 7 minutes talking about it. And he barely didn't even talk about what he did in the episode. He talked about, yeah, working with Chuck Norris was great. Chuck Norris is a great guy. Yeah, Chuck is great. His mind was not there. I love Sam Jones, great guy, but he was not there. As I said to Vespor, and I do remember saying this to him earlier today, it's hard to remember something from 1979. You know, we're in 2022 now, and I'm like, Vespor, do you remember everything you did in middle school? Do you remember everything you did in high school? Do you remember everything you did in elementary? No. So he probably doesn't remember what it was being on this set in 1979 or 78, whenever they're filming it, doing this movie. And we're asking him all these obscure questions, and he's like,
I don't...
save your money and be good. It was like, okay.
No. I wasn't asking obscure questions. So you don't remember anything at all about your time on set. Well, have you seen Flash Gordon? Wasn't there a favorite scene you were involved with here?
I guess not.
I don't know.
I want to say it's going to get better, but stay tuned. We'll let you know how all the rest of these panels go. So now, as we mentioned earlier in this review, we decided we were not going to do the Jim Shooter panel again. We had a wonderful conversation with him today, so that more than filled up anything we would have learned at this panel.
After all, he did speak to us for almost 25 minutes.
Okay, so we went back outside of the arena, and we decided to eat at the same exact place again. Here's the picture. Rapid Fire Pizza. Right. Good again, so we'll give him props. Good job, Rapid Fire. Good pizza again. And that was it. That was our lunch. So we had a nice little lunch. And then time to head back to the arena because 1 o'clock now. We have another Q&A. And this one was interesting. This is going to be former wrestlers. You always like to have wrestlers at these conventions because wrestlers have the best stories and the best experiences, and they attract the best type of fans. Wrestling. So for this one, they didn't have a big name. Like we said, Sting was originally supposed to be there. Nope. It is Rock and Roll Express. Not the biggest name, but a cool tag team if you were into WCW. The Rock and Roll Express, by the way, are Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton.
Right, and well, the first thing that you do is you see the kid, they're like, hey, we love it. And you tell these people are wrestlers. The way they came in with the swagger, and it was great. Albeit, unfortunately for them, there was only probably about 15 people.
Yeah, very low turnout, probably the lowest.
Here's the thing, they didn't care because everybody was looking up at these people with starry eyes, except for Ramsey, who goes, I watch WWF and not WCW.
It's true. I had no idea who these guys were. They were still great, but I had no idea who they were, so they did zero for me. But I did appreciate wrestlers. I like old-time wrestlers that love the business and just love what wrestling used to be. And every single old-time wrestler always says the same thing. Wrestling is not at all what it used to be because it's all scripted. It's all, planned out. No one cares about anyone anymore. They don't save you. You're all getting injured. Old school wrestling, they cared. Yes, it was still scripted, but it wasn't always scripted. There was a lot to be a little chaos, a little story building, and a lot of fun to be had.
Absolutely. They talked about where they knew who had to win, and a lot of the whole how we get to that point where they win was left up between the two wrestlers to decide.
Yeah, so Ricky was more stable. The other guy, his mind wasn't there. Like I said, they're getting older now. It's harder for these men. It's very hard when you get into your 70s and 80s and you have to talk, and have total recall instantly. It's not easy. So Ricky was doing the bulk of it. He was doing most of the talking, and he was having fun. He was like, hey, you look cool out there. Like, he was like acting like, a wrestler still. He saw someone with like a ZZ Top look, and he was calling him out, and he had someone in front of him. Hey, I remember talking to you earlier. Thanks for stopping by again. He was just having fun, pointing everybody out, and Joe was actually having fun. The commentator Joe was actually having fun with these two. But there was a weird thing going on. Joe looked like he had something that he had to keep saying, and we'll learn this in a minute what he had to say.
And he told a story before Joe could say anything about one of his favorite interactions with Ric Flair, about how he fell into the lake off his giant boat into Lake Norman in North Carolina, and how they rescued him. And it was a fun story. I highly recommend you ask him about it should you see the Rock and Roll Express. Wonderful.
Right, and it was great. That was a great icebreaker too, by the way, the Ric Flair story. That got the place going. It was only about 20 people, so there wasn't a lot of people to pick from. So he did a great icebreaker there, telling a really iconic story. And then Joe breaks in, sorry guys, we're not going to be going the full session here. Unfortunately, I've been informed before we started this, we're going to have to break it early. And we were all confused. Even the wrestlers looked confused. It was a very short panel, so we'll sum it up here because there wasn't much. There was the Ric Flair story. There was some questions asked by the fans about his fear of heights and about scaffold matches they used to do and how he would put car sealant on it so that it would make it nice and stiff. And then the wrestler would be so surprised when they're like stuck on it. Great stories. And this was just building. So then Joe's like, sorry guys, I'm cutting you off right there. You got to go. And Ricky's like, oh man, this is terrible. I really wanted to talk to the guys, just getting into it. And he said, no, before we go. And Ricky was very nice. He stood up and said, guys, I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to show up. This is going to be like our last hurrah here. We're still going to do conventions, but our wrestling days are over. We can see that now. But thank you so much for joining us. You have made wrestling special. It's always for the fans. And he gave a nice, wonderful, heartwarming speech. All 20 of us gave him a nice round of applause. Very nice. And they didn't want to leave. But yeah, Joe's like, sorry, guys. And we don't know the reason. We don't know why they ended this early. We have a lot of hypotheses that they had to do some other arrangement. They needed the room. Very strange to cut it off after 25 minutes. And we were very disappointed by that. But
yeah, even everybody there was disappointed. I mean, everybody there was disappointed. Then they ended, and they said, come on out to our tables to talk. And just like Jim Shooter, I headed straight out to their tables to go talk to them. And you know what? They were more than personable with me. They looked me in the eye. They're grabbing my shoulders. They're getting excited about the stories. They talked about Ric Flair. They talked about their experiences. and they talked about how lucky they were to be faces.
Heel is bad, face is good. Yeah.
So, I mean, he was talking about all this, and he was more than glad to do it. They weren't even that interested in signing autographs, which was kind of funny. They were there to literally just be around people that loved wrestling, and I think that's the reason why they were so disappointed. But you know what? I'm not going to hold that fact they got cut off 20 minutes early against them. This was obviously not planned by anyone at that point.
If any of you out there know what happened here, that the panel was cut short, let us know. But I don't know if there is any way that anyone's going to know unless you're a manager there and knew what was going on. So we had one panel cut short, and then we had another panel where the guy wasn't talking about the subject. So far, this has been a very weird day. Not bad, by the way. I didn't say bad once, but a very weird experience here.
And then we decided to go across the road and get some ice cream because getting an ice cream from across the road was half the price of getting it in the convention. But that's to go without saying. When you're at a convention, expect convention prices.
Yeah, now that we're being cut short and the day's being stretched out here, we're like, well, now what do? We kept walking through all the vendors. There's nothing else to buy. We bought everything we want there, and that's it. Yeah, we're going to go across the street and go to Austin's Ice Cream. If you're ever in Huntington or in Canova, West Virginia, you got to go to Austin. Those two locations. Austin has two locations. Freshly made ice cream, great stuff. If you haven't had ice cream, so you had fresh made ice cream. So he got a milkshake, I got a 2-scooper, wonderful, definitely what we needed, and we started talking about the fun we've been having and how weird the panels have been so far. And we're like, well, at least we have one panel left. We're going to end on a good note here. It should be interesting. We enjoyed the ice cream, wonderful time, and we took our time back. We walked through the aisles again, and then again, I'm going to say the same message. We appreciate all the vendors that came there. This is for the people, by the people. Definitely support them. Wonderful. We thank all of them for showing up here. You really made it a wonderful experience. There wasn't enough vendors, though, because you have limited space. Mountain Health Arena, very small arena. They used every square inch of it to the fullest capacity, and that was it. And we relaxed a little bit. And then it was time for the last panel. So now we're at 3 o'clock, and it's an interesting one. We're like, all right, good. We're going to end with voice actresses. And this is good because you get the voices. They're going to be in characters. They're going to be wacky. They're going to be funny. And it's someone we saw already in Lexington, so this is another repeat. We have Megan Hollinshead, who was the voice of Nurse Jenny in Pokemon, and we have Rachel Lillis, who is the voice of Misty. So this is good. We have 2 Pokemon voice actresses, and this is going to be fun. We're ready. 3 p.m. We walk into the room. Here we go.
Now, we're like, it's got to be at least as good as Sam Jones. Well, I'm going to say right off the bat, I was so wrong. This was by far the biggest panel of the day, but it was also the most disappointing panel of the day.
It wasn't a low turnout. I counted. It was about 28 people in the room. Everyone's like, oh, Pokemon. Yeah, I want to hear from the actresses. This is going to be great. So they show up a little late, which didn't matter. It was 3 minutes late. They show up at 3:03, and Joe walks in, and he looks miserable. I was like, wow. Even Joe's like, all right, we're at the end of the convention. That's it, guys. Are you ready? Zero energy. I was like, all right, let's have it for Megan and Rachel. Yeah. And they walk in, and Rachel's wearing one of those thick face masks, covering her whole face, and you can barely hear her when she's saying hello, everybody.
I want to point this out. Every other one that wore one took it off on stage.
And the problem was she's soft-spoken. So the voice actress of Misty is a very soft-spoken woman, which, again, I don't mind. I'm not Mr. Stage Presence. I can't just walk on the stage and start talking. So I understand that. But if you are soft-spoken and you're a little nervous on stage, please take the mask off. You're sitting on a chair with 2 chairs beside you. You're fine. You're not next to anybody. Everyone else wasn't wearing their mask when they sat down. I don't mind wearing masks if you're afraid, and that's good, because that's what, you have the right to. And it set the precedence for this whole panel. They are so soft-spoken. Even Joe, and I don't want to call you out, Joe, I'm sorry if you're listening to this, but we saw you were even nodding off, but we all were. It wasn't your fault. The soft-spoken voices was putting everyone to sleep. So Megan and Rachel were talking so softly, you can barely hear them. And Rachel had the mask on, so like, and you couldn't hear her. Joe was like, any questions out there? And he's talking softly. So finally we have some fanboys and fangirls who are asking questions, and it's silly questions like, why does Pikachu like ketchup? And it's like, and they're like, I don't know. Have you played any games? No. These are the questions they're asking these shows. Like, oh my god.
But here's the thing, though. They asked simple questions that were fun questions. They could have ran with them. The biggest problem is that energy went through the room. There was kids all in the front row, and before the panel started, they were more than excited to see it. They wanted to hear it from the Pokemon actors. They want to hear them talking about what they thought of Pokemon. They didn't get any of it. A woman and her child just got up and left. It was that boring.
And we had a feeling this one could go either way. We were like, all right, it's voice talent. Maybe this will be good. but also, I don't know, without the whole energy of the whole group there, this might not be good. Unfortunately, it turned out that way. Without the guys there, their energy was so low, their voices so soft-spoken. So yeah, it didn't go anywhere. The whole crowd was so disinterested. We saw 5 people on their phones. We had one person playing with a Transformer. I think someone brought like an actual Transformer figure they bought there. They were playing with that. We had 2 kids that were talking. One girl was playing with her toy sword that she brought with her. Another person was falling asleep. I think I even saw someone, and Joe was falling asleep.
Joe ended it early because the audience was about to fall asleep.
Yeah, he said, all right, guys, one more question, and I'm calling it here. And this was about at 3:33. I looked at my watch. It was about 3:33. So he called this early. It's supposed to go to 3:45. Sometimes it even goes later than that. And I think he even called us out. He said, boy, there's so no energy. I'm going to have to get this out of here. So 3:33, last question. It was another stupid question. I don't even remember what it was. They like gave one little simple answer to it, and that was the end of it. And the crowd walking out was very disappointed. They're like, wow, how low energy. That was disappointing.
I will stick up for him this fact. It was the last panel of the con on Sunday.
And it's disappointing because I like them. In the Lexington, when we had Megan with the others, she was great. It was like, wow, this is great. But here, she like didn't want to be there. Rachel was like, no, I'm not waiting around, guys. I'm going home now. She was like done. And sadly, the worst part was Rachel was so hard to understand. I don't even know half the things she was saying. If she was saying things, it was hard because it was all under this, it was like under this mask where she was like so spoken. I don't even know what she said.
And would we like to tell a little bit about what they talked about? We literally could only hear the fact that their favorite episode was like Pikachu eating ketchup. And I was like, what? That was a terrible way to end the day, because after that, me and Ramsey said, we're out of here. We're not looking anymore. This took all of our energy away. Let's get home before we fall asleep.
All that's going on after that is Pullman Square, which we showed you the picture of. Here's another picture of it. They're having a little last event there, and they have a band there playing loudly. We took a picture. Here's the band that's playing there very loudly, by the way. Be prepared for that. So that was it. Yeah, the convention was pretty much over after that, but what a way to end it on. Like, oh my God.
That was our experiences over 2 days. Saturday, like with all conventions, the earlier days are always more lively, and the last days, everybody's kind of tired.
So we're going to give our final reviews after we go through our rankings of the Q&As, but I just want you guys to know, good local convention. If you live in the Huntington area or if you're able to get here in the summer, definitely think about checking out this convention.
Absolutely. I mean, they were still able to get Carrie Ellis, and they were still able to get Chuck Norris come here. They didn't get panels, but you could still get autographs and pictures with them, which was absolutely amazing to me.
As always, in these convention reviews, we do want to rank the Q&As, because that's what the big deal to the Vespor and myself are, these Q&A panels. We're going to rank them from our least favorite to our favorite. And again, all of them are good except for one, and I think you know which one it is. We just talked about it. But we're going to rank it from the worst one all the way to the best, so you have an idea of how the Q&As were for this convention. All right, so we saw 7 out of the 9 or 10, again, if you count Jim Shooter twice. So in 7th place, we have, no surprise here, it is Megan Hollinshead and Rachel Lillis, the Pokemon Q&A. And we're not going to beat a dead horse here. We mentioned very well why this was a disappointment. It's the last panel of the convention. Instead of going out with a bang, it went out with a whimper. Zero energy, very disappointing. You could barely hear them, and they were cut off early, by the way. I want that stressed. Joe cut them off early because he had had enough of them. He saw the place was falling asleep. It went nowhere. Very sad. Again, I like them. I didn't hate them as people. I don't have anything bad to say about them personally, but as a panel, I would avoid in the future if you want my recommendation.
I highly recommend that if you do see them, don't see them as a pair, see them with like the entire crew. Number 6 on our list is Sam Jones. Why Sam Jones? Because he wouldn't talk about Flash Gordon, yet the panel was about being Flash Gordon. He talked more about his life experiences. It felt like a grandfather talking to his children. Wasn't as interesting as I thought it was going to be.
It's like, oh, Flash Gordon, yeah, I was in that movie. Now to tell you more about my wife. I'm like, huh? Yeah, it was so weird. The panel is called Being Flash Gordon. They titled these panels with subjects, and the panels were not on subject. And I really have a problem with that. Jim Shooter that happened with, and this Flash Gordon that happened with. Sam Jones is known for being the star of the Flash Gordon movie. What's the one thing he didn't talk about? The Flash Gordon movie. So yeah, very weird. He's definitely our number 6.
Next up, at number 5 is
Marty Grabstein, the voice of Courage the Cowardly Dog. And again, it's hard with these top 3, 4, and 5 here, because they were all close for different reasons. But I think next on the list should be Marty Grabstein. And I think the problem is he's not an A-lister. He seems like this was a fill-in last second, and I have no problem with that. Marty Grabstein's cool. And it showed. He was coming in all waka waka wacky. Lots of fun, very comedic, but not a very informative panel, I think was the problem with it.
I loved listening to everything he talked about. He made me laugh. He made the crowd laugh. he was an amazing person.
Yeah, I mean, the highlight of his thing was him making fun of Joe the whole time, which was great. Joe was loving it, and he was doing jokes. He was even having fun with the panel. But the best part was he ended with this 20-second courage rant rumble. Great idea to end it, and that's why he at least ranks somewhere on here, but not the best panel. There was actually 4 better than this panel. So our number 4 pick is going to be the Rock and Roll Express. That's Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton.
Absolutely. Even though they were cut early, this wasn't their fault. They didn't even know about it. They were great. We love wrestling, and they were telling stories that were amazing about some of our favorite wrestlers. And the only real problem with this panel, why they didn't rate higher, was because they just didn't get enough time to have a chance to shine.
And we can't rate them in the top 3. We can't give them any medal because if you're only going to give us 25 minutes, unfortunately, and they were entertaining, but unfortunately, you cannot rank in the top 3 if you did not give us a 45 minutes.
For what time they had, and it wasn't their fault. We keep emphasizing this. They put on a show just like back in their heyday for us.
So now for our medalists. Our bronze medals will go to the Power Ranger actresses, and that's Nakia Bursey and Catherine Sutherland, the yellow and pink Rangers.
Now, the reason that we're giving them a very high rating is because even though they were the first panel of the con, they were amazing. They were happy to be there. They were just like the Rock and Roll Express. They wanted to be there. They wanted to talk. They got the crowd going. It was amazing. They loved talking about their experiences, and they told stories that we didn't hear before, which is even better since we've seen them, at least with Catherine Sutherland, we've seen her 3 times now.
Yeah, this is the first time we actually got to see Nakia. She was the 3rd Yellow Ranger, so, we're working down the line here. But she's very close friends with Catherine, and they got along so well. The chemistry, it was really great. They were really playing off each other. You could see that best friends just having fun. They love talking about this stuff. They're so into it, and it was just great. Yes, definitely a bronze medal. They were great. There were 2 panels better.
And now on to our silver medalist, Jim Shooter. He was strictly Q&A. He didn't take the initiative on anything. That being said, he had the greatest stories probably of anybody there. And it was wonderful hearing stories. And the way he presented, you had this big guy look like he'd rip your head off in a second. I highly recommend you all go to him, talk to him. He is a living legend.
Now, the problem I have is this was not supposed to be a Q&A. This probably shouldn't even be on our list. He had 2 panels here. We only went to one of them, as we mentioned. The one we're ranking is the Saturday one at 3 o'clock, which was called Writing for Marvel Comics with Jim Shooter. It's not called Q&A with Jim Shooter. It's called Writing for Marvel Comics with Jim Shooter. So we're adding it to our Q&A because now it became a Q&A session all of a sudden. Yeah, I don't know what happened here. It was very weird, and I will say he was great. I don't care if it was supposed to be Q&A. I don't care if it wasn't. He can't rank number 1 because the number 1 I think is definitely better, but he was great. He answered every question. He was happy to be there. He did try to talk about the writing subject when allowed, but it was not a presentation. Silver medalist, he's wonderful. He was great to listen to. Definitely see Jim Shooter. But now
it's time for the gold medal. Drum roll, please, Ramses. And now we have our number 1 gold medal for panelists, and that's Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, a talented stage actor, and he also went to Juilliard, if you didn't know.
I did not know this. So actually, I did know this. He mentioned it about 1,000 times. Yes, Kevin Conroy, congratulations. You get our gold medal. The room had the most people in it out of any of the panels, and rightfully so. He was the big name doing a Q&A. Chuck Norris was the biggest name there, but he wasn't doing a Q&A for whatever reason. Kevin Conroy was the top Q&A, and he brought his A game. The crowd was into it. He was happy to answer every question. He was happy to talk about his days in Juilliard. He was happy to talk about Juilliard. He was happy to talk about Juilliard.
Oh, and also his stage acting and the troupe he worked with, they formed in Juilliard.
And Juilliard, yes. We're being facetious here. We're only kidding. Kevin Conroy is great. He talked about the history of the Batman voice. He talked about all the cartoon series he did. He talked about the video games. He talked about what it was like doing the voices for the video game versus the cartoon, which was great. I loved that subject. That was wonderful. Really into it. The crowd loved it. And then when he did this routine, I'm not going to use the microphone anymore. He drops the microphone and you could still hear him perfectly. I was like, wow, that was impressive.
He was amazing. He told his points. He even did voices from Batman. He was just a wonderful person to listen to, and he came off like you could just sit down, have a drink, and talk with him about it.
I mean, I'm sorry that he had to be the best because that means the guests weren't big enough. He was great. Don't get me wrong. I would listen to him all day, but that's what's going to hurt this convention. And now that we've gone through our top 7 here, now it's time to give our full review of what we thought and wrap this up. Vesper, our leader, gets to go first as always. Have at it. What was your opinion of this convention?
It was very well done. They didn't have a lot of the snafus in the vendor area that they did in the Lexington Toy and Comic Convention. The toilets were clean. The arena was clean. There was plenty of people in costumes everywhere. It was fun. There was a lot more panels than there were at the previous Huntington Comic and Toy Convention, but the quality of the panels went down a little bit. But that being said, there was only one panel that I did not enjoy, and that's saying a lot considering we went to 7 of them. You could still go and talk to them at their table. We even went and talked to Jim Shooter. You could have gone to any one of these people because they all said it, except for the Pokemon people. They did not say it at all. Please come and talk to us at our table. And it was a joy and a pleasure to be at this. But that being said, it was still much smaller, much less choice in vendors, and there was a lot less panelists that brought star power, like Jason David Frank, saying that we make fun of him. He's still a wonderful person to hear speak. These were huge panels down there. These were insultingly low for most of these people. They deserved better, and we really do feel bad for you, except for the Pokemon people. You had too many people for yours. They should have been on the Rock and Roll Expresses. I'm sorry, they deserved better. After getting my thoughts on a 5-star scale, I want to give it a good rating of 3-star. This was not an average con. It was really fun. I enjoyed it. And the only thing that was really bad was the later half of Sunday where things just started to fall apart for some reason. We can't put our fingers on it. But up till that point, it was an amazing con. It was only $35 for 2 days. 3 stars, final answer.
Alright, so I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. I don't regret it. So this isn't one of those, oh, what was I thinking? No, this is a lot of fun. From the second I walked in on Saturday, I felt very different than I felt in previous conventions. It was welcoming. We all got it in. It was very well organized. Everyone was directing everybody. It was a friendly environment. Everyone was very happy to be there. We had a lot of great costumes. The whole arena was nice and open. They really spread everything out. They used every square inch properly. The aisles were nice and big. The vendors were all spread out. The celebrities were all in a nice square around everything. Very well organized. You had a lot of cool things, like you had the Knight Rider kit right there, right smack in the middle of the floor. That was awesome. And you had How to Train Your Dragons there to ride on. It was a very nice setup, and they even had some Star Wars stuff you can do there. It was great. Very well set up, but it's small, all right? So it's very hard to compare this to other bigger conventions that we've gone to. I wish there was better vendors. I wish there was more options there. That's the downside. I did buy things, so I'm not going to complain there. I got some cool props. I got some cool takeaway stuff, which is a good sign. You want stuff to take home. The biggest downside is these guests. Unfortunately, no, they are not A-tier guests, except for Chuck Norris and Carrie Ellis, who did not do panels. Unfortunately, they didn't. But they were big guests, and I'm glad they were there. But they were there for the payday, and good for them. They had lines out the door, and rightfully so. So that's a wonderful thing. It's all for the fans. Remember that. But the Q&As we had were very disappointing. And I loved 5 out of 7 that we did. One of them was a little weird and one was bad, but they brought their A game in for the most cases, and they did the best they can. But I think the guests had to be a little better. We went to this convention in 2021, and the guest list was much better, and we saw less guests there. Yeah, it was a fun convention. I think I made all my points here. I'm gonna give this 3 stars also. I think it's definitely better than average. It's a small convention, so that has to be taken into account here. We can't rank this as San Diego or New York. This is Huntington, West Virginia. They have what they have to work with, and they did a very good job. They used the arena to its full capacity. The guests weren't big. It's a small little place. That's the downsides.
If the guests that they had didn't cancel this year, I probably would have raised this up to a 3.5 star.
I think
maybe even in a 4. Everybody has their own opinion. Ours is heavily influenced by the panels because that's what we love the most about these conventions, followed by the fact of all the memorabilia and collectibles and things like that. We're just giving you our thoughts.
Right, some are there for the music, and there was a lot of music all over the place. We didn't do it. Some are there for the cosplaying, some are there for the parade, some are there for costume contests. That wasn't for us, and it doesn't mean it was bad. It's just that's not what we specifically are into when we do conventions. But a lot of people are, and if that stuff is great, yes, let us know. We didn't do everything, but we give it from our own experiences of what me and the Vespor did. And that's it. We're going to leave it at that. I think that wraps it up very nicely here, actually.
We would like to hear your thoughts. If you were a part of this convention, please tell us what you thought about it. We want to see the Huntington Comic and Toy Convention continue on and get better. If you're a volunteer, if you're staff, please let us know.
Intergeek, get your A game. We're back. COVID's coming to end. Let's get that game up for 2023. We're going to be attending these again. We want 4 stars. We want to even get closer to that 5-star. You can do it, guys. We know it.
We may be critical of what you put out, but we're still loyal fans.
Yeah, you'll see us again and again. So, yep, stay tuned for our next one. We're going to be doing one more convention, again, end of the year, so we have some time. Leave your feedback here. Let us know what you thought of the Huntington Comic and Toy Convention 2022. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and
ring that bell.
That's right. We want to see you here on Vesper's Retro Reviews. Thanks all for joining us. See you all next time on Vesper's Retro Review. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.